I want to welcome you back, and I need to start with the hook, because if you thought you'd seen the worst of the Cleveland Browns chaos, if you believed that a simple press conference could contain the toxicity brewing in that organization, you are dead wrong. I'm telling you now, what we are really seeing is not just a team losing games. It's a covert war for the soul of the franchise, a power struggle where the head coach, Kevin Stefanski, is betting his entire career on a quarterback who is actively sabotaging the season, all while the undeniable savior, Shedeur Sanders, waits in the wings. This isn't your grandfather's Browns heartbreak. This is a Shakespearean tragedy written in check downs and corporate coach speak, and it's about to hit a terrifying climax. The official narrative is crumbling, and the dirt we're about to uncover on Stefanski's baffling loyalty, the silent mutiny in the locker room, and the chilling implications for the franchise's future is going to change how you look at every single snap this Sunday. Stay with me, because the most dangerous thing in Cleveland right now isn't the opposing defense, it's the coach's egos. Alright, let's cut through the noise, because what happened in Cleveland this past Sunday wasn't just a football game, and the press conference that followed wasn't just a coach answering questions. What we are witnessing right now in real time is the complete and utter meltdown of a franchise. A slow, agonizing public implosion orchestrated by a head coach who appears to be so lost in his own ego, so blinded by a stubborn, inexplicable loyalty that he is willing to set the entire season on fire just to prove a point that nobody else in the world agrees with. The Cleveland Browns didn't just lose to the Pittsburgh Steelers, they were humiliated, they were exposed. And in the smoldering, toxic wreckage of that 23-9 disaster, head coach Kevin Stefanski stood before the world, looked every suffering fan dead in the eye, and delivered a masterclass in denial and delusion that was so profound, so tone-deaf that it can only be interpreted as one thing: a declaration of war against the one man who might be able to save them, Shedeur Sanders. You think you've seen it all as a Browns fan? You think you're numb to the pain? I promise you, what we are about to unpack goes deeper than a simple loss. This is a story of betrayal, of organizational malpractice, of a locker room on the brink of mutiny, and of a two-time coach of the year who seems to be actively sabotaging his own team from the inside out. We are going to dissect every word of Stefanski's bizarre defense of the failing Dillon Gabriel. We will translate his corporate coach speak into the cold, hard truth he's desperately trying to hide, and we will expose the subtle, venomous shot he took at the franchise's future. So buckle up, because the official narrative is a lie. This is the real story of the secret war brewing in Cleveland. A war that pits a stubborn coach against his players, his fans, and the undeniable truth. This is the Cleveland Civil War, and it's only just getting started. First, we must return to the scene of the crime. Let's paint a picture of that Sunday in Pittsburgh, a day that will now live in Cleveland infamy. It was a bloodbath disguised as a football game. The final score of 23-9 doesn't even begin to tell the story of the sheer suffocating incompetence that was on display from the Cleveland Browns offense. At the helm of this sinking ship, looking utterly lost at sea, was quarterback Dillon Gabriel. To call his performance forgettable is an act of extreme kindness. This was a performance that will be seared into the retinas of every fan who endured it. A haunting reminder of what happens when a player is thrust into a role he is fundamentally incapable of handling. The stat line itself is a work of tragic art. 29 completions on 52 pass attempts. Let that number sink in. 52 times Kevin Stefanski and his staff called a pass play. 52 times Dillon Gabriel dropped back, and the result was a miserable, pathetic 221 yards. That's a disgusting 4.25 yards per attempt. To put that in perspective, a simple run up the middle is expected to gain that much. He was throwing the football with the effectiveness of a toddler tossing a water balloon. There were no touchdowns, there were no explosive plays, there were no moments of inspiration or leadership. There was only the slow, methodical, soul-crushing rhythm of incompletion, check down, and sack. This wasn't just a quarterback struggling. This was a complete system failure, a public vivisection of a player who was hopelessly out of his depth. The vaunted Pittsburgh Steelers defense, one of the most aggressive and fearsome units in the entire league, didn't even have to be creative. They smelled blood in the water from the very first snap. They knew with absolute certainty that Gabriel could not and would not challenge them downfield. They sat back in their coverages, their defensive backs practically yawning as they watched a predictable barrage of useless short passes unfold before them. They blitzed with impunity, knowing that Gabriel's internal clock was broken, that his pocket presence was non-existent, consistent. The result, 6 sacks. 6 times Gabriel was swallowed whole by a tidal wave of black and gold, each hit a little more demoralizing than the last. But the sacks don't even tell the full story. He was pressured, hurried, and harassed on nearly every single drop back, his happy feet turning the pocket into a frantic dance of impending doom. The lack of anticipation, the inability to step up into the pocket, the sheer terror in his eyes when the rush got close, it was all a tell. The Steelers knew the playbook was limited, the quarterback was fragile, and they attacked relentlessly. They didn't just win the game, they won the psychological battle before the coin toss even dropped. They respected the Browns' running game, which was marginally effective when used, but they had absolute contempt for the passing game, and that disrespect fueled their dominance. It was a performance so devoid of confidence, so lacking in basic NFL level execution, that by the second half, the game had devolved into a cruel joke. The Steelers defenders weren't just dominating, they were openly mocking him. Cameras caught them laughing on the sideline, pointing and gesturing towards the Browns huddle, their body language screaming what everyone in the stadium was thinking: this guy doesn't belong here. And in that moment, the Browns ceased to be a professional football team and became a spectacle, a traveling circus of ineptitude with Dillon Gabriel as the sad, overwhelmed clown at the center of the ring. For a franchise that has endured decades of quarterback purgatory, from Tim Couch to Johnny Manziel and beyond, this felt like a special kind of hell. It was a throwback to the darkest of days, a painful reminder that for all the progress made, the ghost of quarterback failure still haunts this organization. We're not talking about a young player who showed flashes of brilliance mixed with mistakes. We're talking about a complete and utter vacuum of competence. There was no upside. There was no moment that gave a single fan reason to hold on to hope. Every drive was a countdown to a punt or a turnover. The offense was stuck in molasses, predictable, stagnant, and entirely unthreatening. The Steelers stacked the box, daring Gabriel to beat them, and he responded with the exact same impotent throws every single time. It was the definition of insanity, running the same play with the same failed result over and over. The worst part? The statistical profile of a player who attempts 52 passes for 221 yards with 0 touchdowns and who takes 6 sacks is not just bad, it's historically bad. It's a performance so poor that it should trigger an immediate and mandatory benching in any functional NFL organization. But this is the Cleveland Browns, and we are not dealing with a functional organization right now. We are dealing with a crisis of leadership. The fact that the coaching staff allowed this performance to continue, that they didn't pivot, that they didn't lean into the run game, which had fleeting moments of success, is perhaps the most damning indictment of Kevin Stefanski's entire approach. He allowed his struggling quarterback to take a historic beating, both physically and mentally, seemingly to prove a point to the outside world, a point that was immediately contradicted by the scoreboard. It was a coaching disaster of monumental proportions. And as the final merciful whistle blew on their 1-5 season, the collective rage of the Browns fan base began to curdle into a single unified demand for change. The aftermath of the Pittsburgh massacre was swift and brutal. The digital town square of social media became a war zone, a raging inferno of fan frustration. The name on everyone's lips wasn't Dillon Gabriel, the failing starter. It was Shedeur Sanders, the promising savior wasting away on the sideline. The narrative had been building for weeks, a bubbling undercurrent of excitement and anticipation for the 5th round pick who many believed was a first-round talent. Since the moment the Browns traded away the steady veteran presence of Joe Flacco to a division rival, the clock started ticking on Gabriel's tenure. The fans, the media, everyone saw Shedeur not just as a backup, but as the inevitable future, the charismatic, strong-armed leader destined to take the reins. After Sunday's debacle, the ticking clock became a deafening alarm bell. Twitter, Instagram, and Reddit threads exploded with a furious unified message. The Dillon Gabriel experiment is over. It was a complete and total rejection. Memes depicting Gabriel with a lost poster circulated wildly. Fan-made highlight reels of his checkdowns and missed throws set to sad circus music went viral. The criticism was not just about his poor play, it was about the fundamental injustice of the situation. Why was this happening? happening? Why was a player who was clearly outmatched and crumbling under the pressure being trotted out week after week, while a player with the pedigree and poise of Shedeur Sanders was forced to watch from the sidelines? The anger was directed not just at the quarterback, but squarely at the man who put him there, head coach Kevin Stefanski. The questions came fast and furious. Why would you put a struggling rookie quarterback in a position to throw the ball 52 times against that defense? It was a recipe for disaster, a clear act of coaching malpractice. It felt less like a game plan and more like a public sacrifice, setting Gabriel up to fail in the most spectacular way possible. The decision-making was baffling, the stubbornness infuriating. Stefanski, a man who has twice been named the NFL's Coach of the Year, suddenly looked like a man who had completely lost his way, a captain steering his ship directly into an iceberg while insisting the course was sound. The franchise, now sitting at a pathetic 1-5, feels like it's completely adrift, a rudderless vessel being tossed about in a sea of its own dysfunction. The spectacle is back in Cleveland, and the head coach's job, once considered one of the safest in the league, is now hanging by a very, very thin thread. It is in this context, with his back against the wall and a city sharpening its pitchforks, that Kevin Stefanski stepped to the podium. This was his chance to quell the rebellion, to show some semblance of awareness, to offer a glimmer of hope. Instead, he chose to douse the entire situation in gasoline and light a match. What followed was one of the most bizarre, infuriating, and revealing press conferences in recent Browns history. This was not a coach taking accountability. This was not a leader addressing a crisis. This was a man building a fortress of denial around himself and his chosen quarterback, brick by delusional brick. When asked about the disaster that had just unfolded, and specifically about the train wreck performance of Dillon Gabriel, Stefanski didn't talk about mechanics, decision-making, or the need for drastic improvement. No, his defense was something far more insulting. "He's a tough kid," Stefanski began, his voice a flat monotone, completely devoid of the urgency the situation demanded. "We've got to keep him clean. Obviously, when the game turns into how it turned, a 2-score game, you have to drop back, and that's a tough team to drop back against." Let's dissect that statement, because within those few carefully chosen words lies the entire rotten core of the problem in Cleveland. He's a tough kid. This right here is the ultimate tell. This is the last refuge of a coach who has no legitimate performance-based defense for his player, when the first and only positive attribute you can muster for your starting quarterback after a game-losing performance is that he's tough. You have already admitted defeat. It's the equivalent of praising a chef whose food is inedible by saying, "Well, he tries really hard in the kitchen." It's meaningless, it's patronizing, and it's a slap in the face to every fan who is demanding results, not effort. NFL quarterbacks are paid millions of dollars to be effective, not just to be tough. Toughness is the bare minimum requirement for the job, not a redeeming quality that excuses incompetence. But it goes deeper than that. The phrase, "he's a tough kid," wasn't just a defense of Dillon Gabriel. It was a subtle but unmistakable shot at Shedeur Sanders. In the world of football archetypes, you have the tough lunch pail kid, and you have the flashy, charismatic superstar. Gabriel, with his third-round draft status and workmanlike demeanor, fits the first mold. Shedeur, with his famous father, his NIL empire, and his undeniable swagger, fits the second, by pointedly and repeatedly praising Gabriel for being a tough kid who will stand in there and take a beating. Stefanski is creating a false dichotomy. He is implicitly signaling his preference for the former over the latter. It's a coded message that says, "I value this kind of player, the one who doesn't come with the hype, the one who isn't a spectacle." In doing so, he is diminishing everything that makes Shedeur Sanders a unique and exciting prospect. He is framing Shedeur's confidence and celebrity as a negative, a distraction rather than an asset. It was a passive-aggressive jab, a coach attempting to validate his own poor decision by subtly denigrating the alternative that everyone else is clamoring for. He's weaponizing the concept of toughness to make a philosophical statement about the kind of player he wants. A player who is beholden to him, a player who doesn't come prepackaged with a massive public following. He fears the brand of Shedeur Sanders more than he fears the prospect of losing. That is a chilling thought. The rest of his statement was a masterclass in blame shifting. We've got to keep him clean. Translation, it's the offensive line's fault. That's a tough team to drop back against. Translation, it's the opponent's fault. Notice a pattern. In Stefanski's world, the catastrophic failure of the offense had nothing to do with the man playing the single most important position on the field. It was everyone else. This wasn't an explanation. It was an alibi. It was the desperate maneuvering of a man who is so deeply invested in his own decision to back Dillon Gabriel that he is willing to throw his entire offensive line and even his own game plan under the bus to protect him. This press conference revealed a chilling truth. Kevin Stefanski is not evaluating the quarterback position with clear, objective eyes. He is viewing it through a distorted lens of personal pride and stubborn loyalty, and that is a terrifying prospect for the future of this football team. This brings us to the central burning question at the heart of this entire mess. Why? Why is a two-time Coach of the Year acting this way? Why is he seemingly committing career suicide by chaining himself to a failing quarterback? The answer, it seems, lies in a toxic cocktail of ego, politics, and a fundamental misunderstanding of his own roster. Let's start with the ego. Kevin Stefanski didn't just inherit Dillon Gabriel. He and his front office chose him. They invested a third-round draft pick in him, a significantly higher investment than the fifth-round pick used on Shedeur Sanders. In the political world of an NFL front office, draft status matters. To bench Gabriel, the higher pick, in favor of Sanders, the lower pick, after only a handful of games would be a tacit admission of a major scouting and evaluation failure. It would be an admission that they were wrong. And for a coach like Stefanski, a man lauded for his intelligence and analytical approach, admitting such a colossal mistake might be a blow to the ego that he is simply unwilling to take. He would rather go down with the ship, insisting that his calculations were correct and that the iceberg was at fault, than admit he steered the vessel in the wrong direction. He is caught in the sunk cost fallacy, continuing to invest time, reps, and the team's chances of winning into a failing asset simply because he has already invested so much. Every snap Gabriel takes now is a doubling down on a failed bet, and the pot is the entire season. Then there is the element of control. Shedeur Sanders is not just a rookie quarterback, he is a phenomenon. He comes with a built-in media following, a superstar persona, and a level of fame that transcends the football field. For a coach like Stefanski, who prefers a controlled, buttoned-down, all-business environment, the Shedeur Sanders experience might be overwhelming, even threatening. He may view the spectacle, as the transcript notes, as a distraction from his carefully crafted team culture. He may prefer the more malleable, less famous Dillon Gabriel, a player he can mold in his own image, rather than a player who arrives as a fully formed brand. This isn't about football anymore. It's about power and control. Stefanski might be fighting to maintain the established hierarchy of the locker room, a hierarchy where the coach is the unquestioned star, not the rookie quarterback. The idea of a young player arriving and immediately commanding the respect and attention of the entire league and fan base simply by virtue of his talent and name is a threat to the rigid structure Stefanski has tried to enforce. It's a battle for the locker room's attention, and Stefanski is attempting to win it by championing the underdog, the tough kid who he feels he can control. But the most insidious element is a calculated, almost cynical interpretation of the political calendar. Stefanski knows he is on the hot seat. By refusing to play Shedeur Sanders, he is essentially holding the franchise's future hostage. If he plays Shedeur and Shedeur struggles, the head coach is immediately fired, having wasted the golden opportunity. If he plays Shedeur and Shedeur is immediately great, he creates a narrative where the new franchise quarterback saves the day, but it was done despite Stefanski's initial reluctance, weakening his leverage and perhaps leading to his replacement by a coach perceived to be a better fit for the new young star. But if he sticks with Gabriel and they continue to lose, he can always point to the higher drafted unproven Gabriel as the problem, saving the Shedeur card as his final desperate move. He's essentially saying to the front office, fire me now and you never get to see Shedeur. He is sacrificing the team's chance to win now to buy himself more time and maintain control over the inevitable transition. It's a selfish, high-stakes political gamble that only benefits one man, Kevin Stefanski. This stubborn refusal to make the obvious choice is having a ripple effect that is threatening to tear the entire locker room apart. Think about the players on that defense. Men like Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah are playing at an elite all-pro level. They are holding up their end of the bargain week in and week out, putting the team in a position to win, only to watch from the sideline as the offense squanders every opportunity with a pathetic display of 3-and-outs and turnovers. Garrett is having a Defensive Player of the Year caliber season, a season that will be utterly wasted because the offense can't manage more than 9 points. How long can that last before frustration boils over into open resentment? How many times can they watch their heroic efforts be wasted by incompetent quarterback play before they lose all faith in the head coach who allows it to continue? Sources from within the building are already starting to whisper. They say the frustration is palpable. They say that players see what Shedeur can do in practice every single day. The arm talent, the effortless confidence, the natural leadership, and they are quietly wondering the same thing the fans are screaming. Why isn't this kid playing? The practice field has become a place of open comparison. When Gabriel is throwing off target checkdowns and Shedeur is firing absolute darts down the sideline, connecting on throws that stretch the defense, it creates a visual undeniable disparity that the players cannot ignore. The defense sees a player who can actually reward their elite play, and that player is stapled to the bench. A football team is a delicate ecosystem, and right now, Kevin Stefanski is poisoning it with his inexplicable loyalty. He is creating a divide, a factionalism between a defense that knows it's good enough to win and an offense that is being led to slaughter. He is risking a full-scale mutiny, and for what? To save face? To prove he was right about Dillon Gabriel? The cost of his pride is becoming catastrophic. The murmurs aren't just about the quarterback, they are becoming about the head coach's credibility. The fundamental job of a head coach is to put his players in the best possible position to win. By continuing to trot out a clearly failing player while a superior alternative sits ready, Stefanski is violating the core trust between coach and player. The players are starting to feel that their individual elite performances are being taken for granted, sacrificed on the altar of the head coach's personal stubbornness. This loss of faith is the kind of cancer that destroys locker rooms from the inside out. You don't recover from this level of organizational fracture easily. This is beyond losing the team. This is actively alienating the best players on the roster. The narrative shift is undeniable. The focus is no longer on how the Browns can win, but on how Stefanski is going to justify the next loss. The entire dynamic of the team has been flipped from competition to survival, and the coach is the one making the survival much harder. He is taking every single player down with his ship, and the very best players, the ones whose careers are being wasted this season, are the ones who are growing the most resentful. Imagine being Myles Garrett, watching the best years of your career slip by because your coach is prioritizing his own ego over the team's clear need for better quarterback play. That kind of frustration doesn't stay quiet for long. It boils over on the sideline, in post-game interviews, and eventually it forces the hand of the ownership. The clock on Stefanski's career isn't just ticking, it's a rapidly accelerating stopwatch, and every tick is a missed opportunity for the Cleveland Browns to save their season. And so, the stage is set for what may be the most consequential home game in recent Browns history. After 2 brutal losses on the road, Dillon Gabriel will make his first start in front of the home crowd in Cleveland, a crowd that is now openly hostile to his presence on the field. He will be facing a tough Miami Dolphins team, and he will be doing so with the weight of an entire franchise, the future of his head coach, and the looming shadow of Shedeur Sanders on his shoulders. This is no longer just a football game, it is a referendum. The fans in that stadium will not be a supportive crowd. They will be a jury. Every incomplete pass will be met with a chorus of boos. Every sack will be greeted with thunderous sarcastic cheers. And with every failed offensive series, the chant will begin. Shedeur, Shedeur, Shedeur. They will echo from the dog pound to the luxury suites, an undeniable, unavoidable roar for change. It will be a pressure cooker of an environment designed to break a player who already looks broken. Gabriel will be playing not just against the Dolphins' defense, but against the weight of a stadium unified in its desire to see him fail, not out of malice for him as a person, but out of a desperate, wounded love for a franchise he is preventing from winning. The mental toll of this atmosphere on a young quarterback is almost unimaginable. Stefanski is putting a player whose confidence is already shot into a crucible that could permanently destroy his career. This is cruelty masquerading as loyalty. Kevin Stefanski has made his bed. He has tied his fate to Dillon Gabriel. He has ignored the fans, dismissed the media, and taken a subtle yet significant shot at the most exciting player on his roster. He has gambled his reputation and his job on the hope that Dillon Gabriel can magically transform into a competent NFL quarterback overnight. It is a desperate, illogical, and likely doomed bet. If things do not go well against the Dolphins, if Gabriel puts forth another pathetic performance, if he throws an interception, if he takes 3 or more sacks, if the offense fails to score a single touchdown for a second consecutive week, the situation will become untenable. The calls for Shedeur Sanders will become so deafening, so overwhelming that not even Stefanski's stubborn pride will be able to ignore them. The ownership group facing a massive public relations disaster, a potential decline in season ticket renewals, and an outright mutiny from their star players will be forced to intervene. The only question will be whether they force the hand of the coach or simply fire him and allow an interim coach to make the obvious switch. The civil war in Cleveland is about to reach its boiling point, and the battle will be waged on the field of First Energy Stadium. The question is no longer if a change will be made, but when and how much damage will be done before it finally happens. Kevin Stefanski had a choice between pragmatism and pride, between winning and being right. He chose pride, and in the unforgiving world of the NFL, pride is a luxury that losing coaches cannot afford. The tragedy is that the rest of the team and the entire fan base are being forced to pay for that mistake. The time for subtle hints and coded language is over. This is the last stand for Kevin Stefanski, and he is choosing to take it with a losing hand. The only hope is that the sheer, overwhelming emotional force of the Cleveland crowd finally breaks the coach's will and forces the inevitable switch to Shedeur Sanders before the season is completely and irrevocably lost. This Sunday is not just a football game. It is the final push of the fans' rebellion against a self-destructive head coach. The expansion of this narrative must delve into the deep structural flaws this debacle exposes within the Browns organization. It's not just Stefanski, it's the entire culture of accountability that seems to have vanished. Who in the front office is checking the coach? Where is the general manager's voice in this crisis? The silence from above is as damning as the coach's delusion. This is a franchise that keeps repeating the same cycles of dysfunction, and the current crisis is simply the latest, most painful iteration. The refusal to play Shedeur isn't just about a head coach's ego. It's a symptom of a deeply entrenched organizational fear of the unknown. Shedeur represents a complete break from the Browns' way of the past 2 decades. He's flashy, he's confident, he's a celebrity. The conservative, risk-averse structure of the Browns' brain trust seems terrified of harnessing that energy. They prefer the safety of predictable failure with a tough kid they can control over the terrifying, exhilarating risk of actual success with a star they can't.